Hi, it's Stacey. Welcome to Beyond the Quo. I have a question for you if you're listening today. Have you ever looked around at your life, your LinkedIn, your calendar, your closet, and thought to yourself, how did I get here? You've got the title, you've got the team, perhaps, you've got the money, maybe the house, the car, but somewhere along the way, you stop recognizing the person in the mirror. And you're not alone, right? So I've been there. I know many of the people that I talk to and the clients that I are coaching. A lot of us have this cognitive dissonance about the things that we're doing in our lives, the way that we spend our day, which bleeds into weeks, which bleeds into the months. And we think to ourselves, I feel like I'm performing. I feel like this is a version of myself that I don't recognize. I feel like I used to be a lot more fun. I feel like I used to be a lot more spontaneous. I feel like, I wake up and I go through the motions and I repeat the same day every day, sometimes for months. And I often wonder to myself, is this all there is? For those of you that have felt that way, this episode is for you. And if you listen to the episode 32, which talked about redefining success on your own terms, this episode is titled Living Authentically. And it's part of a 3-series episode, if you will, that I'm doing. The first pillar has to do with redefining success on your own terms. This one is going to talk about living authentically. And the next in this series, which will drop in a couple of days, is going to talk about leading courageously. I find that in our lives, especially in midlife, especially as we're going through the motions I've just talked about, and having this moment, or even sometimes this decade, where you don't recognize the person in the mirror, it's important to understand that, one, it's normal. A lot of us are going through that. And two, there are some super easy strategies that you can put into place that help alleviate some of this. And three, there's a degree of consistency that you're going to want to have as you navigate, doing some of these changes that are going to hopefully impact and improve your life a little bit. So I'm Stacey Luces. I'm the host of Beyond the Quo, and I am a power reset coach. I am a leadership strategist, and I help founders, VPs, leaders, wherever you are in the world, do these 3 things. I find that when we get to a certain level of performative success, the success that is defined by society, and we look around, there's this feeling of, what's my legacy? Is this all there is? And I felt it was important to do this 3-part series to help you understand that there is a way to shift the rule book. We're not going to burn it all down. Some of that is designed to work, but we are going to figure out what actually fits for you, and more importantly, for the season of life that you're in. Some of us, like myself, are raising young adults. We have teenagers that are getting ready to fly the nest. Some of us, I know most of us that listen to this in this community, are in the sandwich generation, which is this interesting space where a lot of us in our late 30s, 40s, 50s, even 60s are raising our young kids, because we had kids older in life, but we are also supporting our aging and, in most cases, ailing parents. And it's this awkward in between where we can almost smell retirement, but sometimes it feels so out of reach because we just don't know how to get from where we are to where we want to be, to not only feel fulfilled, feel at peace, but most importantly, I think for a lot of us, do I feel financially able to navigate some of the changes coming up our way? So success without authenticity, I wouldn't say that it's necessarily a trap, but it is exhausting if it is sustained and you are sort of performative and pretending to be something and do something that doesn't actually fulfill you. It is going to catch up with us. So I want to hit you up with some truths that may make you pause, right? And this really, a lot of my listeners and a lot of my clients are women in leadership, but this certainly goes for anyone in a leadership position. But just to give you a sense of kind of how many of us are struggling in midlife with this, 70% of women in high-level roles say that they felt like they're performing a role instead of being themselves. 62% of senior women say that they are burnt out. but keep grinding anyway to maintain the image, whatever that image is for you, whether it's perfect mom, perfect wife, perfect employee, perfect leader. A lot of us feel like we have to live up to these standards set for us by someone else. And for those of us in midlife specifically, it's reported that we have the lowest level of joy across all age groups. And for some of you saying, well, Stacey, I'm not in midlife, so take me out of that equation. I want to give you another truth bomb that ironically, midlife starts kind of 37, 38. A lot of us are going to live to maybe be 70, 75, 80. So 38 is kind of that sweet spot where technically that's where you start midlife. So don't be thinking like midlife is some nebulous thing out in the universe, right? But that's a serious like claim, right? Like lowest level of joy. And I know in a lot of my episodes, I talk about words that feel uncomfortable because they're not necessarily mainstream. We say we're happy, but we don't use the word joy a lot. We don't use the word peace a lot. We don't use the word fulfilled a lot. And I think in this sort of immediate gratification era, the 30-second real life, right? We're getting glimpses and highlights of people's lives. It's really hard to think, what does a peaceful life look like? What does a peaceful long stretch look like? What does a joyful life look like? With the understanding that it's not always going to be like that. There are going to be bursts and periods where bad things happen, hurtful things happen, traumatic things happen, whether it's grief, death, loss of a job, loss of a partner, loss of a child. All of these things happened and are designed to test our resiliency. And honestly, even though some of it is so painful, it does make us grow in ways that sometimes we have no idea that we could have grown and evolved in those ways. But joy is such a beautiful state of being. And the fact that in midlife, when arguably many of us are as successful as we ever imagined, the fact that there's such low levels of joy across all age groups is really startling. And I want to say that none of this is for lack of ambition, right? It probably is too much ambition, but we're not tired and we're not exhausted. And the word I really focused on in the last episode was that word and that concept of feeling stuck, right? Feeling stuck in either a state of being, a state of emotion, a state of waiting for something else that you can't quite define. None of that is because you are not strong. It is because probably you're too strong and you've been in that warrior mode and that get it done mode. And that I know I'm in Gen X, I'm on the latter part of Gen X, but definitely I struggle with that concept of always wanting to be productive and wearing this superwoman cape, suit of armor, if that suits you better, for sometimes decades. And it catches up. And I feel like people think burnout is this big dramatic thing that happens like a firework. You know, you go up and you have this huge production and then it fizzles out and lands. Burnout is stealth. It's stealthy. It's insidious. It's innocent little things that add up over the course of not only years, but weeks in some cases. And it can be simple things like a packed calendar where you don't have time to eat. You don't have time to move your body. You don't have time to see and do things that move your spirit, right? It could be as stealthy as skipping rest and sleep in order to meet deadlines, in order to catch up. I know when I worked in corporate before I quit at the height of my career, one would argue in corporate, walked away from a high six-figure salary, walked away from a very stable federal job to pursue entrepreneurship. It was scary, right? It was scary. It felt uncertain. And everything I thought I knew just felt different. And I think a lot of us fear change because it feels big and hairy and uncertain. But, you know, cut to 3 years later and there are certain things that I do and enjoy and get to experience that I could never have done had I stayed where I was. So wearing these identities, if you will, for a sustained period of time means that we are, in essence, living inauthentically. And I think when you think of the word inauthentic, you think of fake, right? You're being fake, or you're not being truthful, or we have all of these judgment on that word. But living authentically really means living in harmony and sort of alignment with who you really are at your core. And for many of us who we are at our core, it's ironic. A lot of times in coaching, or for those of you pursuing therapy or other modalities of healing, a lot of times they'll ask you stuff like, what did you like to do when you were a kid? Or what brought you joy when you were a child? And we grumble because some of that feels very fantastical. Like, why am I going back to thinking about when I was a child? Like, I've got real world problems right now, right? I'm in the thick of it. I've got bills, and I've got this relationship, and I've got a job, or maybe a boss, or maybe you are the boss. And so a lot of this feels unrealistic to revisit what you loved as a child. But I will tell you that a lot of us fully baked in by the time we were like at least preteens, right? Like, you're fully baked. A lot of times when we are doing branding work, I went through a major rebrand about a year and a half ago. And the first thing that they did was ask me to reach out to people that, one, have known me all my life, but ask them, like, what are 3 things words you would use to describe me? And we think we go through these massive metamorphoses, and we do, because we're supposed to evolve. If we're not growing and evolving, we're just stagnant and dying. But it's ironic that some of the words they use still apply. So I want to talk about, in this episode, not only those bad statistics, but more importantly, what I try to do for every episode, whether it's me solo or whether I bring guests who I really admire and respect and feel have so much to offer this community, is I try to give you strategies. And a lot of times you will hear me talk about 2 very specific things. One is I use the optometrist example, where if you've ever been to the optometrist and you're getting your eyes tested, and they put you, behind the machine, and there's like the chart with all the letters, and the doctor's like A, B, and he or she's flipping the lens for you to pick which one looks better, that allows you to see clearly. At some point, you get to the point where your prescription makes sense, and you're like, oh, wow, I can read the last line, and you're all joyous and happy about that. But it took some work, right? It took a shift in not only the lens, but your perspective, if you will, to enable you to have that clarity of vision. And using that as a metaphor for our life, sometimes all you need, and what I try to bring to you, is not only a shift in perspective, but more importantly, strategies that you can use today, immediately after you listen, that allow you to have not only that shift in perspective, but that shift in becoming closer to where you want to be. And many times, a lot of us stay in status quo, hence the name of the podcast. We want to go beyond that quo, beyond that status quo. We think that that entails large, pivotal, groundbreaking, earth-shattering adjustments. And sometimes it's just 2-millimeter shifts. It's just little tiny adjustments in the way that you show up, in the way that you live your life, in the way that you talk, and sometimes talk to yourself, that enable you to have a closer version of authenticity than you had maybe before you listened to the episode. So I want to give us time today to breathe around 3 things that I'm gonna use the term power moves that can really change the way that you show up in the world, where you are maybe performing a little bit less and you are closer to living in a state of being that is more naturally and authentically yourself. For a lot of us, so I grew up in a different country. I've got an accent. I mean, there's all the things, right? For many of us, there's that part of us that has to do these things, especially in the corporate environment, to fit in, to blend in, to be more aligned with whatever that cultural expectation is. And that's fine. The trick becomes, how do you live authentically while still understanding that to some extent you are still expected to do that and you still have to do that, right? And so a part of this is what are three things that you can effectively do that allow your true authentic essence to come forth, but still is aligned to maybe some of the goals that you have for yourself that entail that little bit of code switch or that little bit of playing the game or that little bit of falling in line, right? Power move one, like I said, I'm going to give you three, is just what I said, living in alignment with your core values. I'm sure you've heard core values touted in many different forums. And for some people, it seems very fluffy. I will tell you that I like to give people stats, right? I've got a lot of analytical left brainers listening to me. People who live in alignment with their values are 33% more likely to report a high life satisfaction and lower anxiety. That's a lot. That's almost a third of the freaking population. Higher life satisfaction and lower anxiety. One of the things that we are dealing with across the board is that we are chronically stressed, chronically anxious. I've started leaving my phone downstairs in my office. like I don't even leave it on my nightstand charging like I used to, because I'm tempted to look at it if I quote unquote can't sleep, without giving my brain and my body and my, scrambling to-do list time to just chill the hell out, right? And it's rewarded me because now I go back into a better sleep. I'm less inclined to be distracted, and I think I have less anxiety. And so in my coaching practice, I'm going to give you some real world examples to tell you how this works. A lot of us think we know what our core values are. We walk around with a running itinerary of what our values are. So we may say things like, a core value for me is to be successful. It is to be family oriented. A core value is love. A core value is fun. A core value is justice. A core value is whatever the litany of things that you think comprise of yourself. You walk around with those sometimes, a lot of times subconsciously, as your core values. And there's a lot of judgment around people that you perceive do not share your core values. And it's getting a lot of us into this predicament right now where there's no room for open and active listening and compromise and the ability to meet people where they are and not hunker down, double down, whatever version of that suits you, that you are right and they are wrong. And so I give clients about 100 words, right? Core values, but they're just freaking words. Because for every word that is on that list, and they run the gamut, joy, fulfillment, spirituality, religious, family oriented, community, respect, leadership, 100 words. Each person, and I guarantee you that everybody in the world, if they get that list, with the exception of babies, I mean, babies can't freaking read, but every person has a different, think of the optometrist, a different perspective, lens, impression, experience, assumption about each of those words. That's crazy. That's a truth. The way I look at each word on that list is going to be massively, completely, sometimes different with how some of you perceive words on that list. And so another layer of complexity, I ask people to take those 100 words and circle everything on that list that they would consider a core value for them. And they get excited. They're like, oh, I could do this. This is so easy. And at the end of the day, they've got like 80 core values circled. 80. I think the highest out of the 100 words is like 83. And they're excited. They're thrilled. They're like, oh my God, look how many values I have. I'm just so yummy. Freaking crazy. No. Can you imagine on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on sometimes even an hourly basis, trying to live up to the standards of those core values, some of which are actually in direct competition with each other. They're diabolically opposed. Trying to conform, meet the male on some of those. And oh, by the way, judging people that may or may not have the same core values as you. That's exhausting. Not only is it exhausting, it's contradictory to probably who you really are at your core. And it's also frustrating. And you also have a lot of expectations that you're going to have about the way the world is supposed to work and the way your job is supposed to be and the way people are supposed to treat you in line at the grocery store and the way that, oh my God, run the gamut and you live a freaking miserable life because none of these things are tenable. And so we, in that coaching exercise, and this happens within like the first week of my program, is that you get to pick 5. You have to pick 5. And what you'll find is there are some universal core values that it doesn't matter where you were born, what language you speak, what generation you come from, whatever the things that separate us are in our head, there are some universally beautiful core values that for the most part, a lot of us like pick. And everybody wants to think they're special and unique, and you are, right? For crying out loud. But a big one is love. Universally, people rally around that core value. Another one is joy. Another one is family or community. And so peace, freedom. So while we think we are so diametrically different, at the end of the day, when you've got to get to the real and righteous truth about who you are at your core, a lot of us are the same. And so knowing your core values is mandatory if you want to live a more authentic life. What's the risk of not doing that? Well, all the things I just said, but you're also going to keep showing up in rooms that drain you. You are going to say yes to things that don't serve you. You're going to have this disconnection I talked about that leads to that resentment and anxiety and burnout that we talked about earlier in this episode. And so 3 strategies, I want you to write these down if you can. If you cannot, that's great. Do it later. But try to get to your top core values. If you need some help with that, you can find me at Stacey, Stacey, Luces.com. There's a quick assessment there. You can do that, and then it runs you right into contacting me, and I'm happy to share that worksheet with you. But knowing your core values, and there's a bit more work behind that. You just don't identify them. You also start to identify rules for how you're going to meet those core values on any given day. Little bit of a behind the curtain. So for me, one of my top core values is love. It's not the top one, but it is on my top 5. And some of the rules I have around how I feel loved are very simple. I live in Florida, so a way that I feel love is when the sun touches my face, which, I live in Florida, so that's like a daily. Another way I feel love is when my dog greets me. And you will notice that a lot of the ways I feel love for myself when I hydrate, when I remember to drink water, you will see that if we build rules that are achingly simple, remember those 2mm shifts, guys, to achieve, I feel loved on a daily basis. And the other thing I want you to observe about these rules is that nowhere in these rules is my ability to feel love or give love dependent on someone else. I didn't write down there that my kids show up every morning, their faces light up with joy when they see me, they run over and give me a big hug and a kiss. I would be disappointed every freaking day because they're teenagers, guys. Like literally, they're scowly, they don't want to get up early. When they were younger, yeah, that was the case. But do you see how we're like setting ourselves up for failure when our core values are dependent on other people's actions for which we have no control, no command over what they do. A big one that is horribly prevalent is people want to feel respected. And in order for you to feel the value of respect, a rule for you is people have to respect me. Good luck with that shit. That's not going to happen universally. Everybody's not going to respect you. It's just not possible. So understanding what your core values are, understanding what the rules for those are, and working with someone that can help you define those in a way that is as close to who you are as possible is a power move that will change your life. Another strategy to do this is a gut check, right? Like with your calendar. How many things on your calendar actually align with those values? Hopefully you got down to 5, and hopefully you have a couple of rules you can design. But how many things on that calendar actually align with your true values? And then that gives you the autonomy and the power to own your space, own your voice, to say no with conviction to some of those things, those demands, to implement some boundaries that will serve you and not have you feeling even more drained, even more depleted, even more frustrated with, oh, everybody's not, quote unquote, doing things my way, right? So that's the unsexy part, is sometimes aligning with your core values, aligning and defining your boundaries means making some tough calls. It could mean walking away from a job that in my case was ridiculously well paid and I had all this vacation time, amazing benefits, right? It could be a board seat or a couple of things that you volunteer for or do because you were once passionate about, now you feel obligation for. Or even, you guys, sometimes it's friendships or partnerships or with a partner, relationships that no longer fit. So that's the unsexy part. That's the part that makes people shy away from getting closer to their true and authentic selves. So I know a lot of this sounds hard, but your piece is the reward for that. Not your piece of the pie, but you're like PEACE, right? Like that is your reward, is living in your own truth. And I will tell you, as someone that is an avid practitioner of every day trying to live closer to my own true and authentic self, I don't always get it right. Most of the times it's still a work in progress, but it really is so amazing. All right. So power move number 2. Number 1 was living in alignment with your core values. Number 2 is lead with authenticity at work. For many of us, we spend more time at work than we do potentially with our families. Definitely the other big chunk of it is sleeping, if we're lucky. So work takes up a lot of our ecosystem, our space, our environmental, output comes from the work that we do. And here's another stat. Employees with a strong sense of authenticity report better job performance, engagement, and relationships. And this was a study done by Cornell University. Sometimes the job demands we rise to the occasion and perform, yes. But if on the inside we're second guessing everyone and every move, that's got to feel like crap. And when I say second guessing, if you are in a performative state and you are trying to, much like if you're in a part of the, you're driving and you've got static on the radio and you're trying to like fine tune the dial, you're constantly trying to fine tune which version of yourself fits the moment. That's freaking exhausting. You're trying to fine tune which core value should show up to make you more palatable, more likable, more real to this person instead of just being yourself. Not everyone is going to like you. Not everyone likes me. And I'm okay with that. I'm not walking out there being a mega asshole on purpose. But some people are just going to think, hey, I don't like your vibe. And that's okay. It's okay not to be universally liked. What's that old British freaking saying? I'm not everyone's cup of tea. Absolutely. So if you become this polished, productive, sort of diluted version of yourself just to have the acceptance, approval of people that really don't care about you, at the end of the day, they're not the ones you call when you're sick. They're not the ones, if your family's in trouble, come to the rescue. If you have a bad day and break your leg, you call, are they answering the phone? Those are your people, right? So you will lose that sense of connection. There's a part of us that can't show up in our full, true capabilities because we're diluting it to serve a purpose that maybe doesn't serve us anymore. And ultimately, how you perform is affected, right? So 3 strategies for that. Oh, this is going to make some of you vomit, but it's fine. Share one real story this week in a meeting or with your team. Like I said, I think some of you are going to throw up. Vulnerability is a superpower. Vulnerability builds trust. Okay? For a lot of people wearing the Superwoman cape or whatever, this concept of being vulnerable feels really gross and we don't want to have anything to do with it. I want to challenge you to share something real. My business partner and I are doing a big launch in October. I will share more about that in the coming weeks. But we are actively planning for some mini meetups ahead of that big launch. And one of the things we talked about yesterday was we're going to have to get vulnerable about some of the risks we've identified with the launch. And some of them may or may not come to fruition. But she was like, "Why? Well, why?" And I said, because that's how we build trust. Like if we are just swimming along like everything's perfect, it doesn't allow these people that are in our inner circle to collaborate with us, to co-conspire with us, to build up that foundation of trust and equity that is necessary for when, in some cases, shit really hits the fan. And so for both of us, that feels very uncomfortable. And I'm just using that as an example, but share one real factoid with people that allows them to get an inside look at some of the potential chaos that's happening, right? I know that when we were in corporate and we were in federal government, it seemed like every 2 or 3 years, there was this massive reorg. They were always reorging. Some reorganization was happening. And when I did strat comms and we did strategic planning for a lot of organizations, it was a sore topic for employees because they felt that no one ever told them the truth about why a reorg was happening. And once we started to get vulnerable and open share a little bit more about the real behind why, whether it was budget cuts or whatever, people started participating in the solution. And so ask for feedback, right? When you share that story, if it's something that you're struggling with, if it's a decision that you want to make that may affect people and you think you have to carry that load, there's perception and there's reality. And the quicker they can start trusting that you really, really have their back and you are more authentic, I think that will surprise you. Another way is advocate for what you need. Whether that's flexibility, creative freedom, space to grow. I know that when I had a particularly hectic position, there were so many policies in place for us to have more work-life balance. There was a fitness directive where I think there was a gym close by to where our headquarters were. And we could get 3 hours admin leave a week to work out. And a lot of us we had a lot of anxiety around asking for something that was a policy because we didn't know how people would feel, how we would be perceived. And so a lot of us did not advocate for what we needed in those moments. And I remember as a young mom, I had to go on bed rest when I was pregnant with both my children, and coming off of bed rest into mommyhood, where there was no sleep, it just did a number on me physically. And a big part of my recovery entailed rebuilding that muscle mass, rebuilding flexibility in my limbs, because laying down for months to have a safe pregnancy entailed a lot of muscle atrophy. And so I had to advocate for what I needed. And I felt bad about it because one, I was coming off of maternity leave. Two, I was asking for time to pump, right? Both my kids were breastfed. And I felt horrible. I felt like I was asking for too much. Like they would be like, oh my God, here comes Stacey with another idea. And I know so many moms right now, so many women that are having babies later in life, in their late 30s and sometimes 40s, that are struggling with this because a lot of you are at the height of your career and you are struggling with some of these real world things and you don't want to speak up for what you need. And so part of living authentically is advocating for what you need to be your best self, whether it's flexibilities, whether it's enacting a policy that's like that fitness policy that's in place, whether it's freaking say no to a lunch meeting that's not urgent. It's just because that's what was available on homie's calendar and saying, no, I want to eat. I'd like to have my whatever time to eat my lunch. Simple things, you guys, but it builds up, right? So being authentic doesn't necessarily mean oversharing. It just means showing up aligned. You don't have to drop your entire life story. I'm not saying go out there and like I just did, this is a podcast. So I'm going to talk about my life. But you don't have to edit yourself to make everyone else comfortable. And I think that's the bottom line, right? So power move number 3. How do we build up the courage to be more authentic? We talked about aligning with your core values and making sure that those work for you. We talked about leading and stepping into being a more authentic version of yourself at work. And now the third power move is building resilience through authenticity. What the heck does that even mean? Women who live authentically are more resilient during stressful transitions. Y'all, midlife is the transition. There's different categories of people that I'm working with right now. And like I said, I do the power reset coaching. And really, it's women in transition. So one, we're having a lot of people still grappling with leaving the workforce at the height of their career because now they want more. So that's a mega transition. The other one is a lot of us are wanting to retire and still have enough juice to do big things, whether that's entrepreneurship or whatever. A lot of us maybe financially want to be more secure and are starting up, launching, or even have a side gig, a hustle. And so those are transitions because you've got to think in terms of boundaries, in terms of time, in terms of relationships. There are trade-offs to all of these decisions and these big transitions, right? And if you're not careful, you're going to crack under the pressure of trying to do it all. Because if you're still conforming and still performing and life is shifting, whether that's with your career. Oh, another fun fact, the most women, I think the demographic that's getting the most divorces in terms of age is women in their 50s. After being married for like 20, 30, sometimes even 40 years, they're like, I'm done. Well, no, not 40 years. That would make them like 10. Shit. You know what I mean? But you're having these big transitions. Maybe you are experiencing the loss of your parents as a mature adult, right? And so the identity shift and all of these things happening really warrant a degree of authenticity so you can bounce back quicker. Nobody's saying that you won't lay in the ditch for a little bit like this. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that knowing your true and authentic self, understanding what your core values are, understanding what your boundaries are, enable you to move through those transitions, those periods of drought quicker than if you didn't have them and you're hamstrung, right? So 3 strategies. I love this one. I thought I would share it with you guys. Like I said, I'm latter Gen X. We don't praise ourselves at all. We will do an exam and get 98 out of 100 and be like, shit, I missed those 2 questions. It is horrible, you guys. I'm still catching myself doing it with my kids and I have to catch myself. But we never savor the win. And I don't know why. We have so many freaking wins. We don't savor the wins. We don't acknowledge each other's wins. We don't sit in those pockets of joy for any extended period of time. We're always on to the next thing. So I want you to create a joy file. Whether it's emails, notes, reminders of times that you trusted yourself or you had the win, you were at your most authentic, happy, joyous self. I want you to keep those in a space that you can access at any time. Let's also normalize hard seasons. Resilience, a lot of times, isn't perfection. It's just, how quick can I recover? How quickly can I get back on track? And it's not negating that the thing that happened is so hard, but it's not allowing it to detonate the other good parts of our life. A quick, easy example for me, because I see it every day with clients that I coach, is their fitness routine. And in fact, today I did my workout and I'm tired. I'm a bit dragging because I had a tough couple of weeks working, and then I just came off of my schedule. And it just felt hard to get back on the horse. But as soon as I did, it felt better. And so it's not in the oh my God, I am going to move on as quick as possible and ignore what just happened. It's, I'm going to put it in perspective. I'm going to put it where it belongs. I'm going to normalize that it's not the end of the journey. I'm not going to be like, oh, because I ate all this food and had such a gross non-workout 2 weeks that I'm done. It's over for me. It's like, no, I'm just going to go back and try to walk the dog for a mile or two today and like see how that feels, right? So it's normalizing and baking that resiliency into the way that you show up in the world. Resilience does not come from hustle, you guys. Hustling is not resiliency. Hustling is just getting you quicker to burnout. And hustling, we should not normalize hustling. And I feel like a lot of us have. In fact, I feel like I've normalized it again. Like, it's such a bad pattern and a bad habit to break, right? And so the more you stop fibbing and sort of pretending to yourself that what you want is good enough and you stay in the status quo because it feels good and safe, I don't know that that's living authentically. And I think it's going to catch up with you. And then, like I said, in midlife, our runway in front of us is much shorter than the one behind us. So you don't have a lot of time, right? So what are my takeaways today? Giving you 3 power moves, giving you some strategies. Living authentically isn't a trend. Living authentically is not an easy fix, but it can happen with tiny little shifts that get you closer to the true version of yourself that is allowed out to play. And the more that you let him or her, or the more they come out to play, the more and more comfortable and confident you get that you don't need to code switch or show up as not yourself. And I want you to think about living authentically and being authentic as a leadership edge. Peak performers are vulnerable. Peak performers put themselves first. There is not a peak performer that I'm thinking about right now. If you listen to all these podcasts, you watch all of these people doing these massive seminars, 4 or 5 day events, they are in peak physical shape, but they also do a whole 2-hour routine where most of them put themselves first in the first thing in the morning. Right? They're doing cold plunges and meditation and affirmations. I mean, I do some of that too. These days I just like a later morning, but they are deeply, deeply committed to honoring that core version of themselves, that authentic version of themselves, and putting in the work to make sure that they can be the peak performer that we just get the highlight reel from. There's a lot of work behind that. And so if you're looking for power strategies and you're looking for the next best thing, and you think some podcast or book or seminar or conference is going to get that to you, it really doesn't. It really is, what is your prescription for yourself? And then how are you going to live that authentically, right? So if you want to go deeper, I encourage you to visit my website, staceyluces.com. I've got a 2-minute quiz on there that really gives you a quick and dirty insight into, am I happy? Am I showing up the way that I want to show up? And it's some gauges. It's just some pressure tests for you. If you take that and it is really bad, feel free to get on my calendar. I do a 30-minute clarity call, and it's a bit of a power reset, right? We get into what's going on with you and really in 30 minutes, try to give you some strategies that can course correct you. If you want more, please DM or email me. You can find all of those things on my website, staceyluces.com. We can talk more about what coaching looks like, what my Rising Beyond Power Collective, which is a global community of women leaders, looks like, and really get into the rooms and the environments and around people that are not only experiencing a lot of what you're experiencing, but putting in the work to get to a place that feels more joyous, that feels more peaceful, that feels more aligned with who they really are, that doesn't leave this cold pit in their stomach when they get up and they have to repeat the same day over again. And they're like, oh my God, this cannot be it. And for a lot of us, we do it without thinking. And here is where we shove each other and push each other and support each other to go beyond the status quo, right? So you're not crazy. You're not behind. A lot of us think we're like running out of time to do big things. You're not. You're just being called really deep inside to be a more honest, true version of yourself. And that's where that disconnect, that feeling that something is missing is coming from. So when you start living and showing up as the real, authentic, powerful version of yourself, everything feels lighter. Everything feels sweeter. And that's how we keep breaking the quo. So until next week, have a great rest of your week, and I will catch you on the next episode. Thanks.